I mean, I would just point to the statistics. I mean, they're scary. 50% of kids have a chronic disease. A third have diabetes or pre-diabetes. Type 2 diabetes was called onset adult.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess ups, make ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. Now, I'm super excited today because in the past, we've had a lot of people, fathers, even mothers and children, sharing trauma and hurt and pain and narcissist behavior. And we've dealt so much with the emotional aspects. But now we're going to get a whole different perspective. And I'm excited to have Dr. Joel Warsh on. And he's an integrative pediatrician. He's an author. He's a speaker. And he has a new book that just came out called Parenting at Your Child's Pace. So I'm excited to not only have you on, but you just get a whole different perspective on parenting from just a very, and I'm going to say academia, but that's not going to be the correct way because a lot of us have pushed away from the whole academia and are frustrated with, I know I'm frustrated with the whole academia and these labels that are put on us as parents, and then just even don't even get me started with the medical field, But Dr. Joel Warsh, it's a pleasure to have you here on this podcast and for you to drop some knowledge and wisdom on your perspective coming from the aspect of not only being a pediatrician, but also just a whole different spin on parenting and and then about your book, Parenting
Thank
at
you.
Your Child's Pace.
Listen, thanks for having me on, and as a dad too. I mean, you get all the different sides of it, the pediatrician, the dad. It's a different world once you're a dad, I think, on the whole.
No, absolutely. So where does your story start? So I believe you were raised in Canada?
I was raised in Canada. Yeah, I was there for all the way until after my master's, and then I moved to the States for medical school and went to Philadelphia, and then I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and I'm here now.
Nice. How long have you been in Los Angeles?
About 10 years now, I would say, maybe a little longer, maybe like 13 years, something like that.
Okay. And let me ask you a question. Coming from Canada and then coming into the States, what kind of culture shock was that for you? Not only just the shift, but also as a parent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that growing up in Toronto, it's not all that different from some of the bigger cities in America, so I didn't find it too much of a culture shock. I mean, I didn't love Philadelphia as a city when I lived there. It was fine. I didn't mind. I do really like LA. I mean, there's some good things and some bad things about LA, but the good things are great. And I don't know that I really felt too much of a culture shock. I think the biggest difference is that Toronto is extremely multicultural, and other places are not as multicultural. So I think that was something that it took a little bit of a change, but not really a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of different cultures in Los Angeles for sure. Um, but yeah, I think for me, I've really enjoyed living in LA. I like the great weather. It lets you get outside, and I think that as a parent, especially, there's a lot that is very helpful about living in a place where you have nice weather all the time. I think it's a lot harder to parent when it's cold.
That is very true. Didn't really think about that till you mentioned it.
I think so. Yeah, because I watch my family still lives in Toronto or in Montreal, and I see, sometimes they'll be in the snow, and then I think, oh, like we're outside at the playground today, and then they can't necessarily do that. So I do think that it does make it a little bit more difficult when you have those days where you can't uh, get out and go for walks and get some sunlight, and even for your health in general, it's just not as good for you if you can't get outside and move around.
No, absolutely. Where did your journey start with going on the track to become an integrative pediatrician and then, starting your journey with really speaking about parenting and just the different aspects of it?
I would say, I mean, starting my journey, I always loved working with kids. I used to coach my brother's sports teams, hockey and baseball, and I used to work at summer camps and things like that. So I did really enjoy working with kids and teaching kids, and I also love science. So I decided, to kind of mold those two things together, and that's when when I did decide to go to medical school, was always to be a pediatrician. I like working with kids much more than working with parents. The kids actually listen and get better. The parents, don't always, right? So I always found that to be more fun and enjoyable. And So that's kind of where that part started. The integrative part really came as I went through my career and realized that I was seeing patients go outside of the regular medical system and get better. And that really started to make me wonder what was going on. Also, meeting my now wife during med school, she's very holistic minded too. So those two things at the same time kind of came together and made me realize, well, maybe there's a little bit more to this. Maybe we need to be thinking a little bit more about prevention, a little bit more about the foundations of our health and not just treating everything. It's not that I'm not that I'm against modern medicine at all. I think there's a lot of amazing inventions that we have created, and medication can save your life, but we are far too quick to use it. And so that really led me down the path of learning about integrative medicine. And after that, I opened up my own practice about 7 or 8 years ago now, and I am in Los Angeles in a area that I guess that I don't know if it's lucky or whatever it is, but I got to take care of a lot of I get to take care of a lot of very prominent individuals, which has been pretty cool. But also just seeing how interested people were, and so that led me to start doing social media and posting, right? Because I thought that I want to share this with more individuals, and then seeing how quickly that's grown, that made me really excited. But of course, on social media, you can only discuss things in very short snippets, so that's what led me to write the book and really to dive into talking about a balanced approach to parenting.
It's funny because I was just having a conversation a couple days ago with how I just turned 50. So when I was younger, how pediatricians were so quick to throw Adderall or Ritalin at kids that were hyperactive. So I was one of those kids that I just had so much energy, and they just didn't know how to handle all this energy inside. And I'm fortunate enough that uh, my parents had the um, just were against medication. They were against the medication of medicating me because I was definitely probably a perfect case study patient of a child that in that time in the late 70s, early 80s, that they would want to serve medicine to just start to tone me down. Um, and it's nice to see that the shift is happening. And you'll be able to speak on this because I don't know. It's just from what we've been exposed to, but it seems like the medical community is starting to get away from just medicating kids that are just having these bursts of energies. But I don't know what have you seen out there? Because I know all my neighborhood friends were on Ritalin or Adderall or something, and so
Yeah, yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of two pieces of that answer, because prescriptions and diagnoses on most of these conditions where you're talking about ADHD or other conditions, they're up. So I mean, we're definitely seeing more and more diagnosis of the conditions, and we're definitely seeing more children medicated. But I think at the same time, there is a lot more discussion these days on integrative health and trying to push back on that a little bit. So I think it's kind of both pieces at the same time. Definitely overall, I still think it's going up, which is unfortunate, because I agree with you. We have to be having these conversations, and we should not be too quick to give a medication. I'm not against medication. I said it, before. And again, even for ADHD, there are kids that can extremely that there are kids that have extreme benefit from taking medication. They're not able to function at school, and so the medicine can really help them. But to me, as a practitioner and a parent and someone who's holistic minded, that should be the last resort. That should be the last thing that we do, and that should be reserved for severe cases or where it's really the thing that we absolutely need to do. It should not be the first thing. Like, my child's a little bit hyper, and they're having a little bit of difficulty at school. Can we put them on a medication? Like, that is not the right approach to medicine, because medicines have side effects, especially something like Ritalin, Adderall, where you're taking it every day for a long time. Then there's no doubt you're going to have some side effects from that. And so we just need to be mindful that we're doing it for the right reasons, and the benefits outweigh the risk, because everything has a benefit and a risk, and maybe the risks are totally worth it for you, and that's fine. But it has to be the last thing that we do. We need to explore everything else, make sure there isn't other medical causes. Maybe there are things we could do with our diet. Maybe we're not getting enough exercise. Maybe we're not sleeping very well. All these things need to be explored, or should be explored, before you put your kid on a medication every day for life, in general, unless it's a very, very severe case, and that's an outlier.
you know now when we talk about integrative medicine, can you explain to the audience what is integrative medicine?
So to me, it means balancing the best of modern medicine, modern Western medicine, with all the other alternative practices that are out there. So whether that's natural medicine, supplements, herbs, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, whatever that is, just blending the best of both worlds. So not just focusing on modern medicine, but also not just doing alternatives. So kind of combining the best of both worlds, doing whatever makes sense on that day, and trying to minimize medication use as much as possible whenever it's reasonable and safe.
I remember, I have Tourette's and I've had it all my life, but I've learned to control it. But I pass that on to my kids. And I remember a time when we searched out holistic approaches. And I
Hmm.
remember getting some pills, but they're more holistic, combination of different, herbs and so forth that really helped, especially my oldest daughter. And I know when we had gone to the pediatrician stuff, they wanted to just prescribe something, but I was kind of like, no, we're going to try something different. So it's nice to know that things have shifted where the approach of integrative medicine, people are more open to it these days. People are more receptive to exploring the different options that are out there,
I
not just
think,
being so quick to, go to the pharmacy.
yeah. No, I think families or some some portion of families are certainly more open to it. I think integrative medicine and wellness is increasing in terms of people's awareness, and we're more open to it. The medical community, I do think, is becoming a little bit more open to it. It's a very slow change for anything in medicine, but definitely there's a movement towards it, I think, in a small sense. But to me, what's exciting is seeing more families interested in it and more parents reaching out, discussing it, integrating into their own lives. Because I think that's really the way to go. Medicine's not going to change very quickly, but you have to take care of your own family and do what's best for your own family. And so taking charge as a parent can be really helpful. And one of the big things that I talk about in the book is really focusing on the foundations of health and getting back to, well, what are the things that we can control, and then trying to make small changes here and there that can affect and help our kids to be the most resilient in the long term, because the little changes like diet changes or getting a little more exercise, a little more sunlight, that adds up over 5, 10, 20 years, and it can be the difference between developing a chronic disease versus not, or getting more sick versus less sick. Like these things really do matter, and these days we're seeing more and more chronic disease, and we want to be going in the opposite direction.
So we've talked about integrative medicine. Now, what does integrative parenting mean to you?
So that's been, I would say, the spin-off of integrative medicine from me learning about it, just seeing that a lot of the questions that I get either online or in the office are not, I guess air quotes, medical questions per se. They're more parenting questions. So there's a lot of overlap there. But yeah, I get a lot of questions about toilet training or how to feed your kid or tantrums or any of these, general parenting topics. But that is asked to the pediatrician. And so to me, integrative parenting is very similar, where we're bringing in a balanced approach to decision making on any of these questions for ourselves, because these days it really seems like there are so many opinions out there. Everything's so divisive. It's really hard to choose or to know what the best thing to do for your own family is. And everybody says my way is the right way, and if you don't do it, then here's all the consequences. Or you Google something and you see all the worst possible outcomes from not doing this thing. And so parents are just so stressed. And so I'm trying to help people to think through these questions and to bring in that integrative, balanced approach where you are mindful of the information out there. You bring in everything, and you gather that information, you learn about it, and then you make a decision that you feel is best for your family based on that information. That to me is the best way to have an integrative parenting approach, where it's not one way, and not just because some guru tells you that you got to do baby-led weaning, or the guru says you should never sleep train, or whatever it is. Then you bring it in and you make a decision that's right for your family based on that information, and that is how you can make decisions that are unique to your family consistently.
You know, one of the things is you wrote this parenting book, and one of the things you put in there is doing it at your children's pace.
Mm-hmm.
I just did an IG live this morning where I talked about how the ego and pride, how it damages the relationship with your children. And one of the things I talked about was how we as parents, we project our inner fears onto our children.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I remember that coming up about allowing them to grow at their own pace. But, you know, in my early days of parenting, not knowing any better, let me be cautious with that statement because I could have known better, but I chose not to. Because there were books out there, there was classes, courses, but it's just my focus tended to be more entrepreneurship and sales and goal building. So my priorities were messed up. And I can, honestly say that now that I did a shitty job raising my kids. And then now dealing with the aftermaths as they're adults, now having to start the process of healing. But a lot of it was projecting. So I love how your book talks about at your children's pace. So I'm now curious to find out, like, strip the acting. What does that mean to you? Because I know for me, I didn't allow my children to grow at their pace because I wanted, it was that instant gratification where I just wanted to solve the issue because I didn't want to deal with it. Like, let's move on to, and I'll give you a perfect example. Bullying, was something that my kids experienced. And it's like, my, solution was, suck it up. This is just part of life. Let's get over it. What are we going to do? So I didn't allow them to go through the process. I'm going to say the grieving process, and maybe that's not the right word, but I didn't allow them to, and I have three girls, and all three of them, I didn't allow them to grow at their own pace. So I'm very curious to hear your perspective because not only am I starting to learn to reparent, but now I have a granddaughter and I don't want to make that same mistake.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, even just hearing what you said, that it's so important for parents out there to understand that we do what we do when we know what we know, right? And we sometimes make mistakes, or we don't do things in the way that we wish we had have done them 20 years ago. But that's the process of parenting. It's a circular. You keep learning, and once you learn something new, then you impart that as you go on in the future. And sometimes we can look back and say, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done that. But really what we can do now is just to move forward. And so I think that's such a great statement that you said, and I think that's so important just to even to mention, is that there's no, I never want to blame or shame anybody for anything that they have done. I just want to talk about what we can do to help our kids to be the most resilient and be the most healthy and the happiest kids that they can be in the long run, no matter what we did before. And I think that is so important. Now, to your question about your own pace, to me, what I have been seeing more and more recently, and I think it's because of mainly with social media and the news, is that parents are comparing themselves to other people all the time. We're comparing ourselves to our friends, influencers, what we're seeing on social media, what we believe our standard of parenting should be, which is not a reality in general. Especially with social media, a lot of things are fake or kind of curated. And the reality is that we have to focus on our own kids, and we have to parent them at their unique pace. We have to do things at our own unique family pace, and again, bring in the information and do what you feel like is best for your family, not necessarily what the guru says. And that doesn't mean that we can't be aware of what's out there. That doesn't mean that if we're looking at, let's say, the developmental milestones, that we shouldn't know what they are, or when a child's supposed to talk theoretically, or when they're supposed to walk. Like, knowing that the average child will walk or talk at 1 year old, it's a good thing to know for parents. You have a little guidepost for that. But just because they're not talking at 13 months old doesn't mean there's a problem.
Mm.
Especially when you consider 50% of kids are talking at once, so that means 50% of kids are not. So if you're comparing yourself to the child on social media at 11 months who is, and you're worried that there's a problem, then that is something that stresses parents out, that they don't necessarily need to be stressed out for. You do want to understand that there are situations where we should be concerned. Like, we want to know, if our kid's 2 years old, they're still not talking. Okay, well, that's way outside of what we would expect. So yes, we do want to get some extra help. Or if there are many things going on that we're worried about, many areas of development that are delayed, then maybe that is concerning. But just because of one doesn't necessarily mean we should be concerned. And we have to remember that if we're comparing ourselves to some unattainable goal of perfect parenting that doesn't exist, then you're going to be consistently stressed, and that stress is going to go onto your kids. And our job is not to validate ourselves based on our kid walking or talking. It's to really uh, dig deep inside of ourselves, and we don't want to find that we don't want our kids walking or talking to be the thing that validates us. We want them to do it at their pace whenever it is. And it doesn't mean you're a better parent because your kid walks a month earlier. They're going to go to Harvard because they did, right? But sometimes it feels like people are so concerned about these milestones or specific things, as opposed to focusing on their kids and their own situation and then doing what they know is right for their family. They might follow somebody else. So that to me is parenting at your child's pace, is focusing it on them. And even in your own family, if you have 2 or 3 kids, then each kid's going to be a little bit different, and trying to figure out what the right things to do for them on that situation based on their pace, which isn't always obvious, but that's the lens that I want people to focus on, is unique child.
So I'm going to share an inner thought that nobody knows. My granddaughter's 13 months old, 14 months old, and she's not walking yet. But she's in the little stroller thing,
Yeah.
moving around.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with my daughter's mom, and it was about, wow, my daughter, the mom, she walked at 9 months old. I remember I walked, my mom said at 10 or 11 months. So we're starting to compare, so in my mind, and I didn't share this, but all of a sudden panic set in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do we need to get her tested? Why isn't she? So I started having this inner fear of, well, I'm now starting to compare. I'm starting to compare to other people. So it's funny that you shared this, because this is literally just a conversation that not only did I have this week, but those inner thoughts that went on inside of me. It's like, shit, do we need to make an appointment? Like, is there's something creeping up that we should be concerned about? So this was medicine for me right here. This was integrative medicine for me, just to kind of put me at ease, because you know what? You're right. It was me now seeking that validation that I'm looking to other people on social media, talking to friends or just our peers among, saying, hey, oh, your son, they're walking how many months? And I'm comparing, and I'm starting to have all these ideologies in my mind, and instilling fear in myself. So you sharing that is going to now allow me to take a step back and say, you know what? It's at her own pace. Now, I love the whole thing that, yeah, she's not talking by 2, then that's definitely something to look at. But just knowing that each child is different and we need to allow them to grow at their own pace, it gave me a peace of mind. It gave me a piece of security just hearing this from you, because I can honestly tell you from my inner soul, I've been concerned this week about why she's not walking yet.
Well,
So
and I'm
thank
glad that we talked about that, because that to me is, I'm seeing a lot of that, right? I'm seeing a lot of that in the office. It's very similar situations, and I the the big overarching goal of the book really is to talk about these kinds of situations. It's not, I don't go through all the developmental milestones and say they should do it at this age. It's to think about the milestones and think about how we should be thinking about them, because it's not to say that there aren't situations that should have some concern. There are, but there are many situations where we make ourselves more nervous or more stressed than we need to be, and we're not taking into account all of the other factors, like, are they delayed in other aspects, are they having other issues, are they sick, like there are so many other things that go into a pediatrician's mind when we're talking about concern. And again, like, most kids are not walking at half the kids are not walking at 13 months or 12 months, so it's not outside of normal at all at that age. But it is good to know, because if it keeps going, right, and it's 14 months, 15 months, 60 months, and we're still having issues, then maybe that is something you should talk to the doctor about. That's not to say that you shouldn't, but at the same time, I don't want parents and grandparents to worry more than they need to. There's enough to stress about in the world. We don't need extra stress.
Yeah, absolutely. This is beautiful. One of the things I try to do with every podcast is come up with a PDF summary from the podcast, so we can extract some valuable information to be able to offer as a free resource. We've now done the Pinky Promise, we've done the Asylum Project, I honestly think that a collaboration on a PDF on milestones would be beautiful, whether it's 1 page, 2 or 3 pages, but just a free resource. Because I love the fact that you're sharing that in your book, you're not giving a specific age that a child should be walking or should be talking. But it's that magic word that you said, milestones, and it's something to gauge. So I think that would be a beautiful resource that we could offer, to be able to just quell the inner thoughts. Because, like I said, you just put me at peace with just in 2 minutes what I've been thinking about all week. Like, oh my gosh, is there a bigger issue? And I think something like that could be a powerful tool
Sure.
that,
Let's do
parents could
it.
have to just address milestones.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's so important for like good parents worry, so there's nothing wrong with worrying. But I think it's when we worry too much, and there are too many things to worry about, and especially these days, as we talked about, the chronic disease rates are skyrocketing, autism, all sorts of conditions, and so our minds go there very quickly because we see it so often, even though most things are still fairly rare. So I think it's like our minds go there, and just like you said, if anything we can do to put any parent's mind at ease or to help them think through, and even give them a one more minute of a little bit lower stress, then that's always what I'm here for.
You know, when I hear you speak and I've started to look at your social media and so forth, you're definitely out of the box. You're out of the box thinking. And I'm curious to just find out, how do your fellow colleagues see you? Because you're talking about integrative medicine and integrative parenting, which bucks the norm of traditional medicine, traditional parenting. How's that played out in the medical community with your colleagues?
I mean, I think so far it's been okay. I think that if you don't get too deep into the woo woo, then most people are okay with it. I try to be evidence based as much as I possibly can. I try to be balanced as much as I can, and I try to um, not get into things that are so overly controversial, or try to. I don't try to be controversial. I just try to talk about what I feel like is helpful and what I have learned, and so far that's been okay. I mean, a lot of people do reach out in terms of younger doctors and things like that. They're super excited. There's a lot of people that are into it. I don't ever speak badly of medicine, in general, of like doctors, like pediatricians, like good people, right? These are people that go into medicine to help kids. They're not bad people. We might not always agree on the exact way to do things, but that's okay. I mean, we all have the same goal. And I feel like we need to be collaborating and not fighting. So far, it's been okay. Obviously, there's always, no matter what you post, there's a lot of division and people got to say a lot of stuff, but in general, so far, it's been okay. And yeah, there's always going to be people that are not going to like whatever you do, and that's fine. I just ignore it.
And so when I was looking at your Instagram, it's at Dr. Joel Gator. Where did the name come from?
So the Gator part is my wife's last name, actually. So her last name's Intelligator. People think it's always a Florida thing. It doesn't have anything to do with Florida. And nothing against Florida, but it's just a wife thing. Her last name's Intelligator. People thought it was funny, started calling me Dr. Gator. The kids liked it, so I kept it.
That is so cool. And I love the fact, I'm going to encourage people to go on your Instagram. I love that you take the whiteboard and you put out different messages. Where did that come from? Because that's a stopper right there. Like, oh wow, it forces you to take a second look and read the message.
Yeah, I wanted to do something unique. I had seen a couple of people do something similar-ish online there. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a guy who takes cardboard and he writes messages like on the corner of streets and things like that. So that was
Yes.
an inspiration. I saw a couple people doing different things in that kind of realm, and it was, I thought it was very personal, in terms of like, I actually write it, and so it's not something that's mass produced. It's like me in my office making a whiteboard talking about something, and so it has, uh, people have liked it, so I've just kept doing it because I think it's fun and simple, and you get a simple message across. And I don't know of any other doctors that are really doing it, so I kind of took this like mass produced kind of social media cardboardy type thing where the guy does like the general quotes and moved it more into health and wellness and parenting for me.
No, I love it. I may have to borrow that every once in a while, but maybe I'll get a spray paint can and I'll spray paint or something. So, so,
Sure.
uh, so what is the Dr. Gator smoothie that I'm hearing about.
Yeah, so the Dr. Gator smoothie is more of a, I'd say it's a metaphorical smoothie. It's the really the meat of the first chapter of the book, and one of the things that I really wanted to do was again talk about foundations of health. And whenever you watch, a daytime TV show or whatever, the guru, the air quotes guru, goes on and talks about their magical smoothie that cures everything from their book or whatever it is. We've all seen it, like, oh, celery juice and carrot juice and this and that, and it's going to cure everything. And so I kind of wanted to make fun of that a little bit with the book, because there's no such thing. Of course, there's no magical smoothie. I love smoothies; they're great, but they don't cure everything. Have one if you want it. So the Dr. Gator smoothie starts with a big scoop of the seeds being stress, environment and toxins, exercise, diet, and sleep. And you throw in some of the other foundational principles, like getting out into nature, getting more vitamin D, spending more time with your family, cooking more, love, relationships, a happy home, like all the things that really truly go into nurturing a healthy, resilient child. And so that to me is Dr. Gator smoothie. It's not an actual, real smoothie, but more of a metaphorical smoothie on health.
I love that. So I can honestly say that me and my dad, my oldest daughter, who's 27, had a Dr. Gator smoothie last night. And I want to put the story into context is we had a blowout about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, ego and pride is not allowing us to apologize to each other because we're so much the same. She is my daughter. And she calls me out of the blue and she says, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing today? You're going to be home?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Why don't I come over and let's cook dinner together?" Cook dinner. We've never cooked dinner. 27 years, we've never cooked dinner together. And she says, "Yeah, I'm going to send you some ingredients. We're going to eat healthy." Okay, so healthy. And so she sent me a list, and it got some greens, some bell peppers, some tomatoes. Send me a list of like 35 items, like pictures, and to make it easy for me. So I go to the store and I buy the stuff. So we're gonna have this healthy salad and some rice, and then she let me pick some meat. But there was a point where I'm looking, I'm going, this is going to be like $150 dinner. Can we just go out to dinner? Screw the bonding, So I had to kind of mess with my ego because I was starting to get away from. I literally was going to call her and tell her, "Hey, why don't we just go out to dinner? Because this is going to take time. This is, going to be expensive, But it was great because I was able to experience this Dr. Gator smoothie because we got back, we watched the vegetables, we talked about healthy dinner, which I don't think we've ever had a conversation about healthy dinner. She, made this salad that she had concocted from some recipe online, and it was beautiful because we had connection, we ate healthy, and the experience. So I'm now going to label it that me and my daughter had the Dr. Gator smoothie because that's exactly what you're talking about, and we encompass the health aspect without even trying. She's trying to eat healthier because she has a lot of stomach issues. So she has to be careful about what she eats. But she introduced it. And then the way we just got around talking about organic and non-organic conversations that we usually don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was beautiful. And I love the fact that in your book, you're talking about the health aspects of it, not just going into the emotional aspects or this is what you should do or shouldn't be doing, but how important it is to mix in the health side of it, the nutritional side of it. And we're so quick to want to find an easy fix, but not realizing that if you're not and there's a quote that kind of reminds me of this. It said, "Are you willing to die for your children?" And when you think of that, you think of, "Oh, I got to go get fit and strong." But the context behind it was, if you're willing to die for your children, then why are you eating shitty? Wow. And then it went on to just tell about, are you willing to die for your children? What are you intaking? And are you going to go ahead and start to intake the proper foods in order to be there for your child for the long term? Or are you just going to eat like crap and then you're going to shorten the lifespan? So that's what this reminds me of when you talk about the smoothie, is just all the aspects of it. So it's beautiful that you put it into a very easy, and I'll never forget this going forward, the Dr. Gator smoothie. It's going to be a constant reminder because now you put this visual image in my head um, of different things that we can do that it involves not only the nutritional aspects, but with health and then just the emotional connection. So thank you for that. I love the fact that that's how you started off your book because it now cemented that Dr. Gator smoothie in my mind. So
I love it, and that was the hope. I mean, just it's like, a little funny, but like at the same time, but that really is what we need to be doing. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's not rocket science. There are just little things that we can focus on, and just like you said, we get so focused on convenience, and there are some good things to convenience, but we also lose something with convenience often, and that is our health. And so we have to balance, and we have to go backwards a little bit and go back to a time when not everything is so convenient for us and we have to move. I mean, we don't have to move now because everything just comes to our door. We don't have to go for a walk. We don't have to cook a meal because we can just order it, right? And that's great too, but if that's something we're doing often, then we lose health with that, and I think we can be more mindful, and we can turn the corner a little bit and go back to a little bit more balanced place where we're doing some of both.
I it's always perplexed me that organic food costs so much more than this other food, and you would think because it's organic, because it's cleaner, it's going to be cheaper because you don't have the pesticides or anything. Um, do you ever, and I know organic is starting to pick up more and more where people are starting to become more conscientious of eating healthier. Do you ever think there's going to be a movement where organic food is going to be cheaper? And I know that's kind of a loaded question, but
I hope
I
so.
just, man, it's so much healthier, but yet, even I'm going to be honest with you because I was always a penny pincher. And I would look at, example, the tomatoes yesterday. The regular tomatoes, I think, were like 79 cents a pound, and the organic was $1.59 a pound.
Hmm.
And I did the right thing, and I did get the organic, but I really I had to think about it. And I think about all these parents that bypass the organic because it costs a little bit more.
I
To,
agree. Yeah, I agree with you, and I hope so. I mean, I think the tough thing is changing the system is hard. So I hope that over the long run, the more people that buy organic, the more people that buy healthier produce, then that's going to become the norm, and so companies will do, whatever it takes to get those customers and consumers. But that's a long process. In the short term, you got to decide for yourself and your own family what you're going to do, and again, just like you said, it's sometimes it doesn't always have to be more expensive, but oftentimes it is a little bit more expensive, and I think at some point we just have to prioritize our health, and to the best of our ability, whatever you can do within reason, whatever you can afford. I think it's important to prioritize food. And if we're going to spend money anywhere, then that is a good place to spend a little bit more to get the healthiest possible food, because that's your health. So I understand finances, and I understand that everybody's at a different place, but to me, if you're going to put your money anywhere and put a little bit more money into something, then it's into better food, whatever that means for you. That might mean, between two bags of chips, you read the labels, you buy the one with better ingredients. That might mean buying some things organic, or maybe going to the farmers market. And also, the truth is that not everything has to be more expensive that's better, and that's not always true. I mean, you can buy things sometimes straight from a farm. If you can, get to know a local farm, or even online, then they can send you boxes or other things every month, and it can actually be cheaper because there's no middleman. So sometimes you can get things actually cheaper, and then they're much better than you can get in a store. So sometimes it does take a little bit of work, but this comes back to time, where is what do you prioritize, right? If we prioritize our health and we prioritize things like food, then we will spend a little bit more time on it, and we'll find some solutions that work for us.
wow. So I just thought of another Dr. Gator smoothie. And that's as parents, to take your children out to the farmer's market
Definitely.
and use that as an opportunity to not only support your local business owners, you're cutting out the middleman, but also to have that conversation with your kids about these foods that are coming straight from the farm, and trying to stay away from the ones with the pesticides. So I think there's right there another form of using that smoothie concept. to educate, because our children, we are the teachers of our children, and whatever we do, it's going to be a reflection on our children, and they're going to follow. So if we eat crappy and we're not taking health as an important component, then they're going to do the same thing. And it's that cycle that repeats itself generation after generation until somebody breaks it. And it's
Hmm.
unfortunate.
Totally agree.
You know, as a pediatrician, I'm sure you've seen a lot of kids, and you can probably tell some families that are more health conscientious than others. What message would you give to parents that maybe aren't putting health at the forefront of their children's lives? Like, what are the repercussions of it that you've been exposed to, or you've seen as you've gone to these conferences, that you're looking back and you could just say, hey parents, if you're just constantly giving them sweets and not paying attention to their health, these are the consequences. Like, from a medical standpoint, these are the repercussions that your child can experience.
Yeah. I mean, I would just point to the statistics. I mean, they're scary. 50% of kids have a chronic disease. A third have diabetes or pre-diabetes. Type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes because it was adult onset, not really to do with kids. And now the average age of onset is 13 years old. Mental health, 50% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. All of our health in general is going in the wrong direction. And so we don't need anything more than the statistics to know that we have to focus back on our health and back on our wellness. And to me, there's almost nothing more important than that. There are very few things that are more important than that. And so just looking at what the direction we're going means if you continue to live the modern Western way, then these are the consequences of what we're going to see. If you want something different, you have to do something different. And that means prioritizing your health and their health.
Now, those stats are alarming. I got to tell you, I've never heard those before. Now, is a big part of it because it's hereditary, or is it because of choices that the parents making in the
So
household?
yeah. So it's mostly environmental. I mean, there's certainly a hereditary genetic component. There's no question. If you eat something or do something, then everyone's genetics are going to be different, so it's going to affect you in a different way. But genetics in general doesn't change very much in the short term, right? Our genetics changes over decades and centuries and thousands of years and things like that. But environment changes a lot, right? And our environment has changed a lot in the last 100 years, 200 years, and the disease rates are skyrocketing over, in terms of decades, not in terms of thousands of years. And so that to me says it's mostly environmental. There are genetic factors at play. Certainly for some people, genetics are a factor or a bigger factor, but the vast majority of it is our environment and the way that we're interacting with our environment, and the crappy food that we eat and the lack of exercise and the choices that we're making. That to me is the much bigger picture here than just the hereditary factors.
Let me ask you a question about modern parenting concerns. And I'm just going to use Botox because this is something that's come up in my house before. Um, and just all these different things, whether it's Botox or breast implants or all this stuff that, our kids are seeing, social media, which is driving the way they look. And they want to be the Kim Kardashians or the, fill in the blank of whoever they're idolizing and thinking that is what a woman should look like. Um, what kind of impacts does that have on, especially kids that are like courting their parents to sign waivers to, there's facilities that will give kids Botox at 12, 13 years old with their
Hmm.
parents' consent. I
Hmm.
couldn't believe this. I could not freaking believe this. And
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, I think everybody should be able to do whatever they want to do. I think that's, as an adult, you should be able to do what you want to do within reason if you understand the risks and the benefits. But I think it is unfortunate that we're at a point where our mental health is such that so many people feel like they need to do these things, and need to do them so frequently, and don't take into account the risks that come along with it, and also the messaging that it sends to our kids. So I think that, again, it's like you do what you want to do, and if that's what you want to do, so be it. But there is there is a downside to every positive, right? There's a risk and a benefit, and so we're not weighing the long term almost of anything these days. It seems like it's everything is short term, everything is quick fixes, and it's like I want to look a little bit better, I want to look a little bit younger, and we just sometimes, I mean, some people just don't consider all the other things. Even in the book, I talk about one of the hot topics, because the book's about younger kids and breastfeeding and Botox, right? And I do get that question, more often than I would have imagined these days about, when can I go back and get my Botox if I'm breastfeeding? And it's like, there's not a lot of great data on it. The data doesn't even say that you can't do it, but it doesn't seem like a good idea to me to be getting Botox and breastfeeding. I mean, who knows what that does to your breast milk and to the baby. So I would say, at least for that, if you're breastfeeding, hold off until you're done, if you can. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting topic and one that I never imagined I would be exploring as a pediatrician or exploring in a book. But so here we are.
Wow. So I want to touch on a topic that's a little controversial. I don't know if it's controversial anymore. It's just a difference of opinion. And this has to be with little boys being born and circumcision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you a funny story about that. I refused to be somebody's godparent because they were going to circumcise the baby.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually pretty pissed about it. And now I know it's different views and there's, religious views and so forth. But what are your thoughts on that? From a medical perspective, and just because so we got a dog a couple of years ago, and they said the dog had to get neutered. Okay. I was pissed that I agreed to it because the pain that they went through, and then having them in a cone and watching my little dog suffer for 2 weeks, and I don't know right or wrong, but I said if we ever get another pet, I will never have them neutered again, because I just thought it was just the most horrendous thing you could do. And that was just with the dog. And now here with children, I was fortunate enough, and TMI, but I wasn't, circumcised as a child. And, when I've talked to people, you guy talk and so forth, and you say, oh, but it's not cleanly and so forth. And I don't know, what is it just an old myth that circumcision has to be done because of the cleanliness, or what is it you take on that, I guess, from medical aspect or personal aspect? Because I literally refused to baptize my friend's son because they were going to circumcise it. I said, this is fucking this is ridiculous. You're going to hurt that child. Oh, well, they're not going to feel anything. No, bullshit. You're mutilating them. That's just my own perception, and people don't have to agree with me. I don't give a shit. To me, I think that's just unjust, and I think that's just a myth that children have to be circumcised. But I'm going to get off my tangent because I'm going to say some things I shouldn't.
No, you say whatever you want. I mean, I think you answered your own question as to whether it's still controversial. It is. I think it definitely is still controversial. So, my take on it, and the way that I approach it from the book, is from a medical perspective. And we look at the statistics, and still the statistics are that more families choose to do it than not. It's like something like 60-40 now, but the numbers are definitely decreasing. It was higher before. So I think the trend is certainly moving towards fewer and fewer families doing a circumcision. Medically speaking, there are almost no medical indications to doing it, unless you're having serious infections of the foreskin, or other, multiple urine infections or things like that, which is very rare in a boy. Then there's not really a lot of medical indication. There are a few things that kind of very slightly decrease the risk, medically speaking, but nothing that would point me to say, like, oh, medically you should do it. So that to me, and where I go with it, is I think it's personal choice. I agree with what you said, that there's one aspect of it that people, certain like half people think that you shouldn't be doing it because you're doing a procedure and they can't choose, and that's a sensitive area, and any procedure has some risks, and there's not a lot of risks doing circumcision. It's a pretty minor procedure, but still, of course, there are risks. So that is one camp, and then the other camp, is something that might be religious. They want to do it for, it is easier to clean and to manage, and certainly there are less overall issues going to the doctor, but most of them are very minor. So I don't think there is any reason to do it. I think that's more of a personal choice. If you want to do it, then the risks are quite low in general. And so, no, there's not a cleanliness factor to it in terms of, like, you can't clean it. It's totally fine to leave it be if that's what you want to do. So I kind of conclude on circumcision that is a personal choice, and if you want to do it for family or religious reasons, go for it. If you choose not to, don't. And I don't think you certainly need to do it.
Well, I'm glad that it's now becoming more the norm, that it's more a personal choice and not something medical that needs to be done.
Hmm.
Um, so here's another one. So I have three daughters and birth control.
Hmm.
Holy crap. Okay, so we were told because my daughters had very heavy periods, like cramps and so forth. So, oh no, they need to take birth control in order to regulate it. It's going to minimize it. In my mind, it's like, oh no, we're encouraging them to have sex now because now we're going to prescribe them birth control. So I step back into projecting my fears onto them. Like, no, 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 we're not going to get them birth control pills. I don't care if it's going to minimize, so that was me now, my ego, my, um, projections onto my girls. In the end, I conceded, but it was a fight. Is there, does birth control, can it help children that are having, and when I say children, let's just say 13, 14, um, young adults. Um, does birth control help to regulate the bleeding and so forth? Because this is something that we experience in my household with three girls.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of parents that are like anti, that were just like me. Oh no, we're not going to encourage this by giving them birth control because they're going to go out and sleep with everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no question. So it's a medication, right? So there is no question that there are medical indications that might make it helpful for you. Bleeding is definitely one of the major ones in regulating periods because you are literally doing that, right? You're literally regulating the hormones, and so for some young women, that can be very helpful for them medically. So the I am not aware of research that shows that if you put young women on birth control that increases sexual activity and things like that. I think it is more that we're protecting them from giving birth and having a baby. I mean, maybe there are some people that would be more promiscuous if they are on birth control, but at the flip side of that, a lot of people would say if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. So the birth control is probably not going to necessarily be the thing that's going to stop them. I don't know. I'm not extremely familiar with that data, but I've never seen it. But I can say from a medical perspective that absolutely there can be medical indications that can be helpful. But I think what we are starting to see a lot more of is some pushback on birth control in terms of the fact that there are side effects to everything, and we don't always think about the side effects. And we put women on a medication for many, many years, and what kind of side effects could that have on other factors like breast cancer and hormones and all of these things, and then even trying to get pregnant later and infertility. So it doesn't mean that you should or should not put your children on birth control or be on birth control, but I do think these are things that we are becoming more mindful of. And I do think it's like any medication, we shouldn't just willy nilly put people on a medicine for life. We need to really think through the risks and the benefits. And for some people, that may be very beneficial. And for other people, maybe best not to do it. So that's where, again, your own pace, your own children, your own family, these are all things that we need to discuss with ourselves because like you mentioned circumcision, right? It's like there are personal factors that come into decisions for our own family, and so you may have personal reasons why you do or do not want to do something, and that is important.
As we start to wrap up what's been a powerful episode because we were able to dabble into a lot of the medical aspects from the perspective of pediatricians such as yourself. I want to go to your book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, the Integrative Pediatrician's Guide to the First 3 Years. If there's something that a new parent could take from picking up your book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace, what would you want them to leave with after reading that book?
I
What would
want
be
Yeah, I want to leave parents with a feeling of empowerment. I want them to feel like they can do it and that, yes, there are things that are stressful out there, but we all figure it out as we go. No one was a parent until they're a parent. There have been parents for a long time, and we figured out as we go. Basically, nobody feels ready fully to be a parent. I didn't, and I don't think anybody really does. And so what I want everyone to remember is that we can do it. It's inside of us. We figure it out as we go, and you don't need a lot to be a great parent. You need love and care, and that's really what our kids want and need at the end of the day. And so, you are ready to be a parent, and you will do a great job just by being there and being attentive. So, yeah, I really want to leave people with just that feeling of empowerment that they got this, they can do it, and they will do it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for such beautiful insight today, and just a whole different perspective of just integrative parenting and integrative medicine. And just as we start to wrap it up, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
And just thanks for having me on, and thanks for all the great questions. If you want to grab the book, it's available for pre-order now, out on August 6th, and you can get it everywhere that books are sold. Amazon, all the normal places, or you can go to parentingatyourchildspace.com, and then you can grab it on there. And if you do email me, I'll send a bonus chapter to you as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Awesome. What's your email address?
So the one, you can email me at joelwarsh@gmail.com, just my name,
Okay.
or email on there, and I can send them anyone that's listening a bonus chapter, and also access to my parenting community, so you can ask questions for me or other parents if you
Love it.
want to dive deeper.
And is it going to be on Audible also?
It is going to be on. Yeah, there is yeah. So yes,
Are you reading it?
I'm not reading it.
Okay.
I wanted to, but then I had a baby right at the time when it needed to be recorded, so I didn't have like all the days that were needed.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all that you're doing to help educate parents, not only on the medicinal side, but also just on a holistic side. And
Thank
it's
you.
been a pleasure, and look forward to getting to know you better um, over the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye bye.